Okay, welcome everybody to Popcorn Therapy, where the stories we love tell us something about who we are. And today we're going to be talking about Something Very Bad is Going to Happen, which is a Netflix limited series that is in the horror genre. And we will be doing spoilers. We're going to be talking about the ending and like everything that happens. There are lots of twists and turns in this series. So if you haven't yet seen it and you think you might, save this for later, go watch it, come back and listen to this afterwards. If you're truly never going to watch it, go right ahead and listen. We will be spoiling everything. So today I have with me Mel Z, who I've kind of forced her into watching this show, even though she kind of didn't want to. So I'm looking forward to hearing how that goes. But Mel, why don't you introduce yourself, tell folks a little bit about you and how you're coming to this conversation.
I make kind of dark videos online, social media about like mostly dark pop culture, true crime, and I am not a horror fan at all. In fact, I hate it. So I was very nervous to watch this, but I'm glad I did.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I always want Mel on the podcast, and I don't know if this is just where I'm at right now. I feel like I have been watching a lot of horror. I think horror is just a really interesting genre because I think horror often really speaks to our social anxieties, and that's why I find it so valuable and so interesting. But it is funny because Mel will talk about real life things that I find really disturbing on Sorry I Brought It Up, which is the handle. But the fictional horror stories are not so comfortable. So tell me about that, Mel. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think because the stories that I tell, I know the ending. I know
Mm,
what it is, and I'm usually reading about it, not watching it happen.
yeah,
I would not want to watch it happen. There's lots of true crime people who like want to see the crime scene photos and want to go into the gore, and I think that's gross and disrespectful, and also just like I have too much anxiety for that. I don't want it. I don't want to experience that. But and that's the thing with horror and like any kind of scary movies or anything. I cannot handle not knowing what's going to happen. I watch things like this like a lot, just with like these little gaps between my fingers covering my face
right.
because yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot for my nervous system. Like I found the jump scares in this because you told me that it wasn't that scary. And then I looked online and it was all these people saying, "Oh, there's not very many jump scares." I thought, "Okay, great." No, there's a lot of jump scares.
Are there?
Yeah.
It's like maybe a question of what you compare it to, right? And
Mhm.
so one of the reasons I did want to talk to you about this is because I think you and I relate to the title, Something Very Bad is Going to Happen, is like one layer of what I feel like this show is about is a sense of dread, a sense of anxiety, right? A sense of feeling like something bad is going to happen, but I don't know exactly what it is. This sort of confusion of like listening to your intuition, I think especially within relationships, within romantic relationships. But then having those moments of self-doubt where you're like, am I overreacting or is that, what's really happening? Like I just found Rachel, the main character, so relatable in terms of that. There were so many things I found relatable about this show. And I watched it a second time around in preparation for this conversation. And I have to say, it was interesting to watch it the second time around, recognizing that like so many of those scary things, like a lot of people who've talked about this show online, they say like the first episode or two were like really brilliant, very like classical horror kind of feeling, like the sense of dread is so palpable in those first few episodes, and then it shifts to something that feels like, to me it felt campier, it felt like more fun. There was definitely gore, but I felt like there were moments that I kind of giggled a little bit because it was like, okay, this is ridiculous, like it's so far out of the realm of reality, and I kind of liked that about it. I found it sort of more fun to watch that second half. But it was interesting because so many of the things that Rachel was scared of in the first couple of episodes turned out to not be things to be scared of, but then there were like other things that she couldn't have known that were actually quite scary. So I feel like it was interesting to sort of rewatch and see like how many of those things were pure dread, as opposed to actually something to fear. And throughout the course of the show, I don't think anyone ever intends to cause harm to another person. I don't think anyone is ever actually trying to harm someone else. Animals, yes, like when they're fox trapping and so on, but all of the damage that's done is done by like neglect or misunderstanding or not believing women, which I feel like is a really big theme in this show as well. But it was kind of interesting to look back and be like, hold on a second, there's no, like, this isn't one of those horror movies that's like, you know, such and such a villain is out to get you. If anything, this curse was kind of a non-corporeal, like, general thing that I think could be a great metaphor for things that we'll probably get into later. But actually the human beings were just like making mistakes at worst, even though at first it feels like everyone is out to get her.
Yeah, absolutely. The sense of dread was like I always just pay such close attention to like soundtracks, like not just the songs, but they had like sort of just really music that made you feel really uneasy throughout it, which is always just such a brilliant thing to do. Yeah, made me feel very scared. And I feel like with anxiety, like you're often like trying to assign it to something. Like
Right.
you're like, oh, I'm scared and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's this thing, you know, the the bathroom scene with the dead fox. Is it a fox at the beginning in the
Yeah.
bathroom? Yeah, like,
Yeah.
you know, the person that's left their baby in the car, like something's gonna happen. We don't exactly know what it is, but you're kind of assigning it to all of these things the way that, I mean, I certainly do that.
Yeah, and that's so from a counseling perspective, anxiety is a big theme. Like a lot of people come to me with anxiety and depression, which are in some ways two sides of the same coin. They so often co-occur with each other. And we talk about that sometimes, like when you have anxiety, especially the kind of anxiety that is like a somatic kind of constant, like my diagnosis is generalized anxiety disorder, which is that, right? It's like always this feeling of dread or anxiousness. And like when your body feels that way, your brain will try to fill in the blank, and try to locate like where that anxiety is so that you can feel like you have some control over it or whatever it is. Like it's sort of an unconscious function. And it can be helpful to sort of notice that and think like, okay, maybe this is just something that's happening in my body. And what I need to attend to that is like have a nap or eat some food or like, you know, whatever it is, like something to calm my nervous system so that that cycle doesn't have to happen in the same way.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Yes. It was sort of like she wasn't believing herself in the
Yeah.
first little bit, right? Like, yes, like such a huge theme of this for sure is like women not being believed. Nobody around her believing her, but then also her questioning herself constantly.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So the basic premise of this show is that Rachel and Nikki are on their way to Nikki's family home to get married. They want to have like a small little family only kind of marriage ceremony. We learn pretty early on that Rachel has not been so into the idea of getting married. She doesn't really want kids. Nikki's kind of pushed these things on her a little bit. And so she kind of wants to have this non-traditional small ceremony. And then as they arrive to the cabin, there's lots of creepy stuff that happens, lots of kind of feels like sort of bad omens, bad luck, like weird things happening along the way that again, some of them are just, they're nothing, you know, they turn out to not be anything near what it feels like they could be. And one thing that she ends up believing, because there's evidence that mounts, is that Nikki's family is trying to kill her. The first few episodes feel very much like Get Out.
Yeah.
Like Get Out for a white person or for like a woman or something like that. And it turns out that's wrong. And it's it's quite sweet that she ends up getting a cake that says, "I'm sorry, I thought you were trying to kill me."
Yes.
And of course, there's sort of a deeper meaning to that. So we kind of come to understand that like the family, as it turns out, the matriarch of the family, Victoria, has a brain tumor, and she has an intention to end her life over the course of these 4 days or something like that. It's sort of like the wedding becomes a stand-in for a living funeral for her. And Nikki didn't know that, and Rachel didn't know that. So that sort of comes out, they end up having to talk about it. They move on from there. But then it turns out that what's actually happening is that Rachel's bloodline, Rachel's family, has a curse. And my understanding of the curse is, if you accept a proposal of marriage, if the person that you marry if you believe 100% that the person you marry is your soulmate, you'll survive. But if you have any little bit of doubt that the person you marry is not your soulmate, you will die at sunset on the day of your wedding. So it seems like what's important is the believing. And on the second watch, I was sort of trying to figure some of that stuff out, because I feel like on the first watch, it was a little confusing, like what the rules of the curse were and so on. But it seems to be what you believe in that moment is what matters. And almost everybody dies. She goes back and looks at the history and how many of her relatives are living and so on. She found one person who had gotten married and survived. And in rewatching that scene, I'm like, no, everybody dies. Like, they either had children out of wedlock, didn't marry, or if they got married, they died, right? Except for this one person who she ends up, and again, I find this campy and like fun, but she ends up through a Ouija board kind of like calling this ghost of her great aunt, into the room. She possesses the sister for a few minutes, and she explains this like really, gothic spell that she has to do, which involves cutting off her toe and like getting some of her husband or her to-be husband's semen, and like there's a whole ritual that she has to do, and it's called
Living Dead. Yeah.
Living Dead. But what it's meant to do is turn you into that person's soulmate. So it has this kind of Stepford wife quality to it, where it's like you can take this potion, but it will turn you into someone that you're not, possibly. And so are you taking the risk of becoming someone else? Anyway, there's so much to talk about for me with so many of these pieces. But maybe with that, tell me a bit more about like what you thought about this show, like what you liked about it, if there were certain parts of it that you thought were really interesting or that you hated maybe.
Well, I did not like the jump scares, but I did really like it. I loved the darkness of it all. The lighting was really interesting, and I liked the graphics, the red fonts that popped up and filled the entire screen, and the red of the wedding cake, or not the wedding cake, the I'm sorry, I thought you were going to kill me. It's all
Right.
red fonts, and it reminded me of like classic horror. Very simple. I
I
liked
found out later because I was curious about it, but her whole style I loved.
yeah,
The black sort of goth like style, the oversized t-shirts, the jewelry I loved. But I looked it up because I was interested in her tattoos, because they felt like they fit the aesthetic of the show, and I wanted to know more about their meaning and stuff. And I was like, are these like actors' tattoos, or they were all created for this character? So all
yeah.
of those tattoos none of them were the actors' tattoos. They were all created specifically
I
by.
looked that up too,
Yeah.
and I found that her character actually looks quite a lot like the showrunner, the person who wrote it and directed it, I think. I forget what her name is.
Haley Boston.
Yeah, Haley
Yeah.
Boston. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a cool character. Yeah. I liked the idea of looking at marriage, like the march to marriage, as being horror, because it is for a lot of people. And just the unknown of it all is terrifying.
Yeah. I think the first time watching it, what really stood out to me was this concept of marriage as the death of identity. Just that metaphor of like when you get married, you enter into not only this kind of committed relationship with your partner, but you definitely marry into a family, right? Like that's part of what it can be, is that you're kind of merging. The way that my supervisor always phrases this, and I find this so interesting, is the idea that marriage or long relationship is two family systems coming together to try to heal. So like we pick each other often because of our wounds. And sometimes those wounds are not just the ones that we have within our own lifetime, but the intergenerational traumas, and I think we can talk about it as curses. But that there's this idea of like we're trying to balance each other out, or we're trying to heal from each other. And often when I'm working with couples and relationship, the question will be, if the two of you came together to heal, like two family systems coming together to heal, if you look at it from that perspective, what do you see, right? And so often this will be the case. It's like the thing that bothers you the most is sometimes the reason you chose that person, right? Like I come from a family that is very emotionally calm and steady, sort of to a fault. Like, you know, I was the very emotional person within my family, and I often felt like folks like didn't really know what to do with that, because everyone is just, it's very stiff upper lip, like, you know, British background, you just push your way through and you don't show your tears, and like that's kind of where I come from. And my partner is like very affectionate, he's very sensitive, and sometimes he gets angry. And when that happens, it's very disturbing to me. But when I thought about it from that way, I was like, this is actually what I wanted. Like I wanted somebody who would show me what he was feeling, who I could talk about these feelings with, who's like very demonstrative about how he feels about me. And that's going to include anger, right? Like I can't just choose, you know, the sort of positive emotions, like other things are going to come through that as well.
Yeah.
And so it's actually been really helpful for me to kind of think about it that way and look at it that way and see, okay, well, my discomfort with this is partly because it's just not familiar to the way that I grew up, but that's exactly why I wanted a relationship that was different from that, right?
Well, it's interesting that Rachel doesn't have a family.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's just his family here. She has her dad, who is possibly mentally ill, but also just maybe traumatized from what happens when she's born.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the things about that is Rachel doesn't have any family in the sense that like she doesn't see anybody for Sunday dinners, but what happened to her family and the traumas that are passed down to her, I think that's part of what underlies the anxiety. And this is often what happens, you know, with folks that I'm working with too, is like some of this might not be yours, right? You know, there are studies that show that phobias, for example, can be passed down at least 3 generations, right?
Yes.
So something bad, something very bad that happened to your grandfather, you may have that same fear without having any direct experience with that, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to see that like Rachel's family isn't sort of physically present in the same way as Nikki's family is, but they are present in other ways. Like her dad, obviously this is a huge spoiler, but her dad turns out to be the sorry man, who is this mythological character who was a part of a trauma that Nikki's brother Jules experienced when he was a child and couldn't understand at the time. And he didn't have the words to explain it, so it became this like ghost story. And it turns out, and I thought that was so interesting that it's like, oh, this ghost story is real. It does not have a supernatural. Well, I mean, there was a supernatural element, I guess, but that was more like a trauma told as a ghost story that turned out to be real. And Rachel's dad is very like, well, he's kind of this sweet, traumatized person who's like trying his best, right? He was another one of those characters where you're like, oh, the sorry man was not an evil villain. He actually was, well, in that scene where he marries Rachel's mom. Rachel's mom is pregnant at the time. She dies of hemorrhage, which is how everybody dies in this cursed situation. And then he performs an emergency C-section on his dead wife, which to me was like, wait for the paramedics. Like, don't try to do that yourself. Like,
I mean, I guess they're in
crazy.
the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that was his only choice. But I was like, have you been trained to do this? Like, what? He was a Marine, so like maybe there might have been some sort of emergency medical training or something like that. But it's that was a moment for me where I giggled a bit because I was like, come on, like this is a bit ridiculous.
Absolutely. I liked that he was the sorry man. That like just how classic, like a man, just I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, and that I found that interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you know, I've seen this show described as in the genre of feminine horror or female horror or something like that. And I feel like it definitely fits in with, I mean, I'm not sure how I feel about that phrasing, but I do think it's interesting to have, you know, female or feminine people writing horror stories that are different from the classical ones that you'll see, right? Where there is like this evil axe wielding, monster that the hero has to, vanquish, and those horror films have always held social anxieties. But now that women are writing these stories, the social anxiety is marriage, right? It's not plague or,
it's not like a guy outside your window coming for you. It's the guy inside, your husband, like threatening your, everything.
your life. Yeah. And I mean, from my perspective, again, at first there was that sense of like, oh, there's death of identity, there's the changes that you go through. Having children is something that can really change like your body, your physical experience in the world. Like it changes so many things about your life, and marriage can initiate that process. But from a more literal perspective, I think it's still true that husbands are the most dangerous people in a woman's life. Like a woman is likelier to be killed by her husband than pretty much anybody else.
Absolutely, it is.
Or any other way, right? Which is something that you probably know more about because that's what your true crime perspective tells you, right?
Yes, absolutely. And pregnant women. That's the number one cause of death for pregnant women is their husband or partner.
And I think again, horror, speaking to social anxieties of the moment, I think that it's so interesting that we're in a moment where there's evidence mounting that more and more, specifically women, are choosing not to get married or be in partnerships or have children right at the moment. There's so much to say about this and so many ways to look at this, I think. But I've also been reading this book called Boy Mom by Ruth Whitman, and she's a feminist talking about raising boys and looking at masculinity and things like that. And we are in such a moment of women, like, fair enough, kind of being like, why would I do that? Right? So like, why would I endanger myself physically? Also, why would I want to expose myself to this trad wife thing, which is like this trend that's happening right now with the sort of rise of, the conservative right and other things where, the idea of going kind of back to that, not exactly 1950s, but maybe even older than that, the kind of like homestead mom, who just does everything from that like, really traditional feminine perspective. But I mean traditional for patriarchy, not traditional for like actual traditional, but like patriarchy's ideal of a woman, right? Which is very Stepford wife-like. Mm-hmm. So again, her taking the potion to be Nikki's soulmate, there is this sense of like, would I become then a trad wife? And it's that moment is so interesting too, because she's like, maybe it'll be like a lobotomy in a good way, where like I won't have my anxiety anymore and I won't have these self-hating, self-doubting moments, and I can just like relax into being this ideal like trad wife, Stepford wife woman. And that will be like easier for me, right? And it's I like that she chooses not to drink it. I think from the perspective of the writers of the show, deciding like, no, she's not gonna, that's not what this horror is gonna be, right? She's gonna, however she goes out, she's gonna go out as herself.
Yeah,
right?
Well, it is interesting that the potion turns her into his soulmate and not him into her soulmate, because that's the issue, isn't it? She's doing what percentage are you at throughout of believing that he's your soulmate, and it's, it gets a little higher, but it's never 100%. And so that's the issue in the first place, is that he's not her soulmate.
And I feel like he is an interesting example from that sort of, I'm not sure what word to use for it exactly. I feel like it's sort of I kind of want to say something like failed masculinity. It's not exactly toxic masculinity, because I feel like Nikki he's not cruel. He's not trying to hurt anyone. Like, he's trying to be a good person. But the way that he tries to do that is by never saying what he actually thinks and feels, and just sort of placating and reassuring her in this way where, like, if you look back right at the beginning, I think it's the first episode, they're in a diner and she's telling him a story about her. It was somebody in her family who was like a child who was kind of psychic and could tell the future. And he just keeps saying like, oh, sounds like Kathy had a good imagination. And she's like, no, the child like actually had a connection. Like the child, this was real. And he was like, yeah, but it wasn't real though. Like, I think you can see so early on that he's kind of like being nice, but he's just not believing her. And so I think, a lot of what Boy Mom, this book, talks about, which I'm very interested in as a mom of two boys, is like, who are these boys supposed to become as men? What do they think that means? Like, there's the older traditional version, which is like, you're the patriarch and you're the provider and you're strong and you never show any emotions. And then there's the sort of red pill, like, incel perspective, which is extremely dangerous. And again, these are the men that feel so victimized that they end up murdering women and sometimes each other, right? There are some interesting statistics too that, men are also very vulnerable to the attacks of other men, right? Like, men can be the victims of like violent crimes perpetrated by men. So it's like men aren't exactly protected from this, right?
Yeah,
Because
men are way more likely to be killed than women are, but it's by other men.
By other men, right? There
Yeah.
you go. Yeah. So yeah, I think Nikki, sort of thinking back on it is like, okay, who was the real villain of this show, right? It's sort of the curse, which exists as it is. And you can also look at the curse, I think, not only as kind of intergenerational trauma, but like maybe the system or society or something like that. But then you have Nikki, like the moment when he, at the end, she's like, okay, we'll get married. I'm trusting you. Let's do this. And he decides to take that moment to be like, now I'm going to say my feelings. And I don't think we should get married. And she's like, hold on a second. Do you not believe me?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I mean, no, I don't believe you. And then, that last episode, like, it was horrifying, but there was also something really validating about like seeing Nikki be like, now look what you've done. Look what you've done by not believing women, right? Like, look at the damage that you've caused by just being an innocent bystander and not actually, taking any initiative or putting yourself forward or taking responsibility for your feelings and thoughts. And just kind of having this idealized, vision of what a relationship should be and just kind of trying to fit Rachel into that bride-shaped hole, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I was definitely struck by how much work she was putting into all of this and how little he was putting in. Everything. She went to the lengths of cutting off her fucking toe. Like, she did so much and was wrangling the family and, bringing them into that weird therapy moment where they were facing their mother's death. And, she was doing all the emotional labor and he was just kind of along for the ride. And so it was really interesting that at the end, he was the one who unraveled it all. Classic.
Yeah. And I mean, what a feminine horror villain, right? Like, what an interesting feminine horror villain is just this sort of like,
Yes.
this guy who's just like, I'm not doing anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
And
just
you
not
can do
doing anything.
all the work. You do all the work, try to hold it together, try to make it work. And just with, barely any effort,
Yeah.
they can destroy it, right? Yeah.
And I think that's one of the many reasons that that many women today are choosing not to, attach to men, is because of man keeping, I guess, is the word that I've heard about it recently. And I think Nikki's parents had that dynamic, right? Like, Victoria was kind of the matriarch of the family. There's a moment where the dad says, when she's gone, we will have nothing holding us together anymore. So we're going to have to figure out a way to do that without her there. Like, she was sort of the linchpin of the family in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, I think that's a dynamic you see a lot of the time, is like the women doing the social organizing, organizing the medical appointments, like doing the childcare. Like, it's a lot of labor that men are maybe trying to learn about it if they have an interest in that. And I think, again, from that boy mom perspective, like, I'm certainly mindful about, how do I teach my boys about this? Like, how do I teach my 5-year-old? One example is just like, okay, you're expected to help clean up after dinner. Like, you're expected to do something, like anything. I don't care what you do. I don't care how badly you do it, but I need you to have an expectation that you're a part of this family structure, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And he's growing up with a dad who cooks and cleans and like does all of those things as well. And my husband and I have lots of conversations about this, because so much of it is, socialized, taught to us. But we're kind of in this situation where there's this male loneliness epidemic, and where's that coming from, right? And then you've got these women being like, why would I want to take that on? Like, why would I want this extra labor when I'm already doing all of these other things? And we're still in a patriarchy. It's not like that's been solved.
Yes.
So it's kind of a tough moment for a lot of
Yeah, because should we really have to explain to you at this point why? Like, really? You don't see why at this point? But I feel like a lot of it, you know, that classic, like, well, he just didn't see the laundry needed to be done. He just didn't see that, you know, whatever. He doesn't know who his kids' teachers are because he just doesn't know. Like, often, like, you you do have to be like, I did this today, and I did this, and I did this, and you need to do this, and this, and this. Because otherwise, it's just this, like, weaponized incompetence thing, right? Where, like, oh, geez, I just didn't know. Like, and that's what was weird about this series was she keeps telling him over
Yeah.
and over and over again, like, what the problem is, and he's kind of just placating her, right?
Yeah.
Throughout, which just felt, it honestly, like, it felt really close to home to me, and it fucking pissed me off. The whole thing just pissed me off. But I did love the ending.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was very interesting that she sort of comes back to life as the new witness, right?
Yes. I honestly, I didn't quite understand that. I didn't understand what killed, because the guy that's at all of these weddings, she discovers a very creepy David Lynchy sort of character. Um, what killed him that brought her into that role? I didn't quite understand that. Did you?
I read it as Death.
Yeah.
Like Death, the character, or like the personified whatever. Because when he tells the story of the curse at the beginning, he says, you know, my great whatever it was, her partner died, and she begged Death to bring him back to life. And he says Death loves a bargain. So that's how the curse was placed, is that he was like, I will bring back your lover, but now you're going to have this curse where you have to be 100% sure that that person is your soulmate. I mean, it's a bit of a weird curse.
Yeah.
You know? So because he met his love, the witness, but then he left her at the altar because I think he was scared of commitment or something like that. I'm not sure if it was that he was scared of the curse, but then Death was like, okay, I'm going to punish you for that and force you to witness all of these marriages where someone is going to die, kind of thing. And he sort of takes a little bit of morbid enjoyment, I guess, out of that experience. So maybe the curse hasn't been passed on to the next bloodline since the witness. I think could be a way of looking at it, is that the curse has stayed within Rachel's bloodline since him. And so there's this warning that if you don't marry your soulmate by sunset on your wedding day, I think if you marry them and they're not your soulmate, you die. But if you don't marry them, then the curse is passed to them.
Yes.
So like you can choose not to, but then they are the ones that get the curse. So I'm not sure if anybody dies immediately in that moment if you don't marry them, but it's like passed down to the next generation.
Okay. Yeah.
So one way of looking at that could be this is the first time it's been passed to a different bloodline.
Yeah.
So therefore the witness can change. But also, I mean, the curse was passed to the bloodline and nobody expected, except maybe the witness, I don't know if he even knew this, but that it was like, oh, now everyone who's ever been married in this bloodline who's still living, who didn't marry their soulmate, is going to now hemorrhage and die. And like, it wasn't totally clear who was dying in each couple. I think in some of them, both people in the couple were dying. It was like, it was so much blood.
Yeah.
Absolute bloodbath. So she's saved from it for a little while. But then when Nikki comes and completes the marriage ceremony, which is disturbing, like, again, that's kind of the villain moment where she's like, she had done her half of the marriage ceremony, and then Nikki thinks maybe we can stop all this blood from happening, so I'm going to force the ring on her finger and say I do. And then that's when she starts bleeding, right, is that she's gotten married now. So she's a part of that. So I think that's kind of what it was. But it did feel to me like there was such a sort of folkloric bridal sacrifice kind of feeling to this show. And I think at first you think that the family is going to sacrifice Rachel for some sort of nefarious occult dark magic or something like that. With that super scary like scarecrow wedding dress thing that Jules creates in order to scare the sorry man or whatever it is. Like, again, good intentions. But yeah, you think that that's what's going to happen. And the second episode is called Bride Shaped Hole, right? And there's like a lot of folklore about sacrificing a bride, like in order to save other people. Like, you know, this bridge will only stand if like the bride is buried underneath it, and then like that will allow the people to come together, whatever it is. Like, this is something that's been, I think, in the cultural imagination for generations. Maybe because, so, okay, this is a theory I like. Mythology is explicit cultural teaching. Folklore is traditionally the people's stories, specifically the women's stories. So it's like, if mythology is told by the people in power to say like, this is God and this is goddess and here's their rules and here are the stories or whatever it is, the folklore will be the stories that get told by the women around the fire at the end of the night once the men have been sent to bed or whatever it is and they're still doing their work. And there are a lot of these folklore stories that have the bridal sacrifice. So I think from that perspective, especially the way that like she goes, I don't know why she goes into the little atrium area in the snow, but she's bleeding, she's in her white wedding dress, and she kind of falls, you know, this sort of drops of blood on the snow, like very kind of Snow White, like, you know, kind of thing. She's sort of bathed in this blood. And then when she wakes up again and she's now immortal, I guess, as the witness, and she's going to go on in that way, her dress is completely red in the front. Like, it's sort of like her costume has changed and she's now this different person. And, you know, again, it felt satisfying that Nicky had to survive, but he witnesses what he's done, like the failure, his absolute failure to show up as a good partner, to protect her, to listen to her, like all of these things. And he witnesses her getting up and like moving on, you know, and then you see the fox with the,
Yes.
that had chewed off its leg
Yeah.
in order to escape. Again, pretty obvious metaphor for like this fox trying to escape the trap of marriage. But she gets to drive away, right, and have her little marijuana cigarette or whatever, and like just like live her life the way that she wants to.
Yeah, through the ring out the window.
Through the ring out the window, right?
And
yeah, and I
song.
saw some stuff too about like people wanting to see a season 2 where she, as the witness, is more than witnessing, right? She's like explaining the curse to people, letting them know their choices. Like, you know, she might be a different kind of witness than this guy was, who just shows up and goes, "Are you sure he's the one?" And then like gleefully watches everyone die. You know, there's definitely, he could have been a lot more helpful a lot sooner, right?
Well, yeah, because she'll be like a woman witness,
Yeah,
right? What does that look like?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I doubt there will be a season 2, but it would
Yeah,
be
I've
cool.
heard that the showrunner might create a second series, but it would be like a totally different, you know, cast of characters and stuff like that, exploring a totally different fear. I mean, I think it's one of those stories that probably has to end on that kind of note of a question.
Yes.
But I do think it's interesting to imagine, yeah, how would she go on as a witness? What is the rest of her existence going to be like?
Yes.
As a counselor in training. Which
Yeah.
is how she, right?
That's right. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I liked the witness when the rings are missing, and he says no one escapes the 3 rings of marriage: the engagement ring, the wedding ring, and the suffering. That's something
Right.
that's wasn't written for this show. I've definitely heard that before, but I liked it for sure. Also, when the mom dies and the dad, oh, by the way, the mom is Jennifer Jason Leigh, right? I mean, I know her from Dolores Claiborne. Did you ever see Dolores Claiborne, the Stephen King? Okay, it's so good. And then also the dad, Ted Levine, is Buffalo Bill from
Oh.
Silence of the Lambs. So he's got that.
Ah.
Yeah, it was really, I was like, why do I know this voice? Like, he's just got that. And I looked it up, and yeah, he's Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. So he's just got this eerie presence to him. But
Yeah. I did
yeah,
not realize that.
yeah. So when the mom dies, and he says she would rather die as who she is than die as someone she doesn't recognize.
Right.
which was kind of foreshadowing Rachel choosing to die as herself if
Right.
that was what it came to, right? If he wasn't her soulmate, which is,
Yeah.
yeah, then becoming the Stepford wife or whatever, right? She chose
Yeah,
to not do that.
absolutely. Yeah, I hadn't even thought
Yeah.
of that. Like the brain tumor and the lobotomy in a good way is how Rachel talks about the potion.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a really good point that Victoria, and I mean, she was already going a bit, right? Like she was kind of having these moments, especially in the first episode where you're like, what is happening with
Yeah.
this really creepy Jennifer Jason Leigh? But yeah, you find out later that the tumor has been affecting her and she's in and out of being herself, I guess.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
What did you think of the brother-in-law?
Jules?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
and
I thought
Jude
it
is
was
the son.
Jude is the son, yeah.
Right.
I thought it was interesting that at first he seemed quite scary or bad or evil. And the way the show tells the story is that it turns out that he and Nell are each other's soulmates.
Mm-hmm.
I think from the perspective of the curse, based on TikTok videos that I watched trying to explain how it all works, because again, it was a little like, wait, what? But the reason he didn't die in the bloodbath is because he believed that Nell was his soulmate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure it mattered whether or not she did because she's not technically part of that bloodline. Though it did seem in the massacre that everyone who was married was affected, whether they were blood related or not. So I wasn't totally
Yeah.
clear on that. So they might see each other as soulmates. And the way that the show kind of expresses that, which I think is interesting, is because these two are always honest with each other. That's what makes them soulmates. I mean, I think that the concept of soulmate is interesting. Rachel even says at a certain point, like, what if I don't believe in soulmates? Then how does this whole curse thing work?
Yeah, it's a ridiculous concept to me. I just cannot believe that.
Soulmates.
It honestly baffles me that people believe in soulmates. I think it gets people into bad relationships all the time. Like, what are you talking about? This magical thing that there's one person and they just happen to live in the town, 20 kilometers away. Like, come on, that's crazy. I don't know. I mean, I don't think people actually believe in it in that way, but it gets thrown around a lot. Like, I don't think this guy is your soulmate. I think he's just a loser that you're bored and wasting your time with.
Yeah, I mean, so, from an attachment perspective, and from kind of my therapist perspective, looking at relationships, which I think are really interesting, I agree that the concept of a soulmate is potentially really dangerous. Literally dangerous in that I think sometimes people stay in abusive relationships because there is sometimes a mythology around that that's been implanted by someone, or because of obligation or other things. Like there are reasons that people will stay in unhealthy relationships, right? Even not necessarily abusive, but unhealthy relationships. And so often those unhealthy relationships have a pattern where there are like moments of real connection or like sort of glimmers of hope or whatever it is, and then mixed in with that there are these really devastating, damaging things in between. So my sort of hot take about relationships is that attraction is our wounds trying to heal. It's like something in our system seeing that either this person will poke at my wound and give me a chance to fix it, or this person will actually help me to heal that wound in a healthy way, which, like, in my experience, it's like you have to kind of work through the wounding to figure out what healing might look like. And when you don't do that kind of mindful internal work, depending on where you've come from, if you have secure attachment with like a great like family relationship and no trauma and all that stuff, maybe it will be intuitive for you to find a healthy relationship. I think that actually, though, it's not individual families and it's not like the fault of parents necessarily. We live in such an unhealthy society and culture that it's really hard to make healthy emotional choices in the layers of unhealthy systems that we live within. So I don't think it's our fault, and I think that we can do some work to kind of think about like, okay, what would it look like in a patriarchy, for example, for me to marry a man who does the dishes, cares for me, takes responsibility for his feelings, learns about how to do emotional labor, cares for the children, deals with his own trauma, things like that. And what am I bringing to the table and all of that? Like, I mean, there's different, that's a little bit of an idealized situation, but
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, he's going to be doing a lot of work.
it's a lot of work, right? And then, yeah, I mean, as if women are coming in perfect, like we also have our things that like we also need to take responsibility for our feelings and our communication styles and our wounds and like all of that stuff and kind of bring that into a relationship as two human beings who have all kinds of curses and whatever it is like with that. So with all of that being said, I feel like if you have an idea that a soulmate is already out there and it's like just one person, you'll either end up with someone with that mythology, or maybe you will be searching for that forever and you'll never find that. Like, I think a lot of the time people have to kind of I'm talking about myself, maybe I had to come around to this idea of like, it's not going to be a fully formed, perfect relationship. It's going to be, can me and this other person work together and communicate and like try our best? Not to become each other's soulmates, like that's not how I would think of it, but more so like, how are we collaborating to create a healthy relationship and family?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think a lot of people aren't willing to, like you said, maybe that will never happen. Maybe they'll never find. I think a lot of people aren't willing to be alone. Like at the risk of not finding it. A lot of people don't want to be alone, and so they settle for people and kind of call it a soulmate. And those are usually the worst relationships where you're just kind of lying to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, with Rachel and Nikki, there was a lot of lying from his perspective, lying for the mythology of the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like, why does it matter that I wasn't, visiting my college friend or whatever? Why does it matter that I broke up with my ex one day before I met you and lied to you about why I was where I was?
Yeah. And kept it going. Never came.
Never told the truth about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it matters because, the relationship was based on a lie in a lot of ways. And so much of the relationship was that it was him believing in his parents' mythology and creating a mythology for him and Rachel kind of believing that mythology, I guess. Although she had a little bit more of a sense of like, I feel like her mythology was that Nikki was a good person. I think her mythology was that Nikki was a better person than her. And so she had to sacrifice a lot of herself in order to stay in that relationship with him. There is a moment where it might be the moment where he says like, okay, let's fix this. Let's get married after all. And she says something like, I'm done sacrificing myself for you. Like I've literally cut my toe off.
I think, was it him that said marriage is the curse? And she said, no, the curse is the curse.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, she said, I'm not a fucking adventure for you to go on. Yeah. I feel like that there was like a turning point in the series where it was like, it's kind of like a traditional horror for the first little bit. And then halfway through when like at the engagement party where it comes out that, oh, actually that story isn't true. Right? Then her belief, like that's kind of a soulmate story that, oh, it was fate, right? Fate brought them together. But then it turns out, no, that's actually not. So then she kind of stops believing in the idea of a soulmate in that. And it kind of turned into like relationship horror after that. It wasn't so supernatural anymore. Yeah. There was a thing with Jude throughout where he seemed to kind of know something that, the rest of the adults didn't know.
The line that I wrote down actually that I love there was, I'm so sorry this happened to you, but it did happen to you. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Yeah, I think that moment with her and Jude is like, believe your own eyes, believe your own experience. And I think, what she was saying in that diner scene about, she said something like, I believe that, children can see things that adults can't and stuff like that. I believe that too. Yeah. And I think in the moment when Jude sees death, again, it's sort of reinforcing that, yes, that Jude has a perception that maybe Rachel shares. And I feel like she's had so much of self-doubt and people doubting her and being told it's not real. And she wants Jude to have a different experience of like, at least believe yourself.
Yes.
Right, as you're going forward into this. One piece that I didn't pick up right away, the Coldies custard shop, I thought was related to Nikki's family, but maybe it just happened to be in the town or whatever. And the true crime podcast that they were listening to in the car was about the owner of Coldies being a serial killer.
Right.
And how this pregnant woman had escaped the Coldies serial killer. And then when we see the footage of Rachel's mom and her dad, Jay, going into the Coldies shop or whatever, in that moment, they're getting custard, and Rachel's mom has a moment of like, I don't like this, I want to leave now. And Jay is like, what are you talking about? And she's like, this is going to be poison or something. Like, I don't like this, let's get out of here. So she has an intuition that something is wrong with this Coldies guy. And the ice cream was okay, but that was the killer, I think, was actually what was happening there. So it was like a moment of Rachel's mom having that dread, and she doesn't know exactly where to put that anxiety, and the anxiety was right, but she just didn't know like what to put it on. You know, it turned out that he was the serial killer after all, and she like picked up that vibe.
Yeah. I didn't get the serial killer part, but I definitely noticed that she was like, just all of a sudden, like, I have a bad feeling. Like, I just
Yeah.
don't want to be here. And I didn't think that he believed her. He seemed to be kind of like, no, I think everything's fine.
But yeah, that is a really interesting, it's another moment of, yeah, a man being like, everything is fine. And I think so much of the time, you know, from this perspective, it's like, maybe it would be fine for a man coming from that place of privilege, expected to be safe most of the time, whereas women have learned to be a little more vigilant to danger because of the cultural mythology, which again, you know, we just talked about that statistic that like men are way likelier to die than women by men's hands, but that's not how they walk through the world. Like, I think a woman will walk through the world. Like, there are a couple moments when Rachel has her keys between her fingers. And I think a lot of us learned that trick. Like, when we're walking alone at night at dark or whatever it is, like, put your keys between your fingers so that you can defend yourself. Men are as likely or more likely to get hurt in scenarios like that, but I don't think they think that way. Like, I don't think men go around with keys between their fingers because they're expecting to be assaulted, maybe unless they are, you know, have some sort of visible vulnerability that they're aware of. But if you're like cisgendered, white guy, tall and strong, like, you would never think twice about that, right? And so, you know, when I think about that anxiety, I'm of two minds about it, because like, as somebody with anxiety, especially about my children, let's say, I will tend to worry more about how they're doing or what's going on or whatever. And my husband and I have had these conflicts about like, I think something might be wrong, and he's just like, it's fine, you know, like, everything is fine. He has his own relationship with anxiety, which like manifests differently than mine. But yeah, there will be these moments of me feeling dismissed. And, you know, we had an experience recently where, you know, we had 4 different doctors say like, oh, this weird lump on the baby's neck is fine. It's no big deal. It'll go away on its own. And I was in the ER on the Sunday night with him because I was like, I don't think so. Like, I think that this is not okay, and I need him to get some attention. And it turned out he needed an emergency surgery and 2 days in the hospital. And so this was one of these moments where I was just like, can we take me seriously now? Like, can we not dismiss me when I say that I'm having a fear? But the reality is that a lot of the time I have a fear and it is fine. You know, like, there isn't something wrong, and I will over worry. And I do kind of need to have, like, I appreciate that a lot of the time, you know, my partner is coming from a perspective of like, it's probably okay. And if he were to like activate with my anxiety with me, and then the two of us are like, I don't know that would be better.
No.
But at the same time, I feel like, you know, I do still want to have that like, okay, I see that you're worried. Let's get this more information, or like, let's do this about it, or like, let's gather evidence and talk together about like what's really going on here.
Yeah.
I guess is something closer to what I would want. But like, it is such a different sort of anxiety pattern coming from these different perspectives, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice to just live anxiety-less?
Wouldn't it? Well, it would. And also, I mean, one of the things I've learned about anxiety, especially the postpartum anxiety that I had and the intrusive thoughts that I had about my first baby, is that anxiety is also correlated with survival.
Yeah,
Like that anxiety will cause you to like take a bit more precaution or like go to the hospital because you're just like, I feel like something very bad is going to happen and I need help. And it's such a good thing that I did follow that intuition in this particular case, right? Like I think
100%.
even though like it's a heavy burden to carry and like it would be nice to walk around without any anxiety at all, but anxiety is also quite motivating, right? It has its
Absolutely.
benefits. And so
I
I feel
wouldn't do
like
anything if I didn't have anxiety.
right. So many people with ADHD, it's like the only thing that's going to get me finishing this thing is like the anxiety of how much trouble I'll get into if I don't or whatever it is, right?
Yes,
Which isn't that adaptive. Like there's better ways, I guess, to motivate yourself or whatever it might be. And also, yeah, for a lot of us, anxiety is working really, really hard to protect us and keep us safe and, keep us functioning or get us moving forward or whatever it is, right?
absolutely. I trust my intuition more now. You couldn't pay me to be younger, even 5 years younger. Like you couldn't pay me. I would never want that. Yeah. Because I feel like I trust my intuition so much more now. Like I've kind of like, been the the emotional one in the family like you, and the quote unquote drama queen, because I actually want to face, like I have a bad feeling, like I want to talk about it. We need to do something here. And so it's definitely pushed me rather to make changes and not trust certain people. And sometimes I just get bad feelings about people. And I'm like, I'm just gonna trust that. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna trust that. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, what a revelation to be able to feel like if I don't like this or if this doesn't feel right for me, I have every right to walk away. And I think, again, people socialized as women, tend to learn I have to defer to everybody else. I think explicitly, mothers are taught to sacrifice themselves for their children or they're bad mothers, right? Like, I still get this messaging all the time. It's sort of this mom guilt that you get if you want childcare or,
A day
I don't
off.
know, a day off. Yeah,
Yeah.
like so many things. And I feel like that dynamic is just so powerful in so many ways. And the guilt is so strong. And, I think that I participate in it. I feel like it's been helpful for me, to sort of consciously step back from that dynamic. And I have to remind myself sometimes, like if I have my partner taking care of the kids for however long, to just actively set aside my intrusive thoughts about what things could be happening and let him figure it out. I think that's benefited everybody for me to just step back and not overfunction in the way that I feel like I've been taught to in this society, right?
That's a good word. That feels like exactly what Rachel was doing in this series, was just overfunction, everything.
Overfunctioning, yeah.
What can I do here? Running around, the kind of chaos going on constantly. Um, yeah, it exhausted me just watching it.
I have to say, I thought Camila Morrone, however you pronounce her name, was awesome. I thought she was so good, like the
Yeah,
actor.
yeah,
The moment where they're at the engagement party or rehearsal dinner or whatever, and there's somebody who's like, you guys have to do eye
yes,
contact for 3 minutes.
yes.
And it's just a
5 minutes.
long shot, 5 minutes, yeah. And it's just a long shot of her. She would be staring into a camera, I
Yes,
guess, for that scene. But you could see like flickers of emotion coming over
yes.
her face, like flickers of doubt, flickers of like there's a question, and then she's trying to stay present, and like that. I thought that was like incredible acting.
I did
She just
too.
did such a good job.
I did too. That moment was really interesting and also very upsetting because of that goddamn flash that came into it. I yelled
Right,
out,
right,
God
right.
damn it!
Yeah, a jump scare, I guess.
Jump scare, yes. Oh
Yeah.
my God. But yeah, that would make me uncomfortable to stare into anybody's eyes for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a it's something that I have been taught like in a yoga context, in like a tantra yoga context, in like, you'll see it in couples counseling sometimes. For, if it works for you, I feel like some people can do that, but maybe there's a reason it was chosen for this horror, this relationship horror, because it is, I mean, even just thinking about it, right? It's kind of like, if I were to stare into someone's eyes for 5 minutes, what would I see? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
It's
if
very
if
uncomfortable.
the eyes are the windows to the soul and you really can see the truth. I think in that moment for Rachel and Nikki, it was like, there's a bunch of truth here I do not want to see. One of my favorite tarot cards is the Two of Swords, which is someone blindfolded with swords in front of her heart, who's just like, na na na, I don't want to know, And I feel like that's the mood. Like when we see that card, it's just willful ignorance. It's just, I don't want to know. I want to keep going. But you can really endanger yourself when you shut your eyes to, the intuition that you feel inside or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of him in this series, Nikki.
Yeah. Yeah. And her in certain ways. But I think, again, like anxiety, one way of looking at anxiety is that it's an inhibitory emotion. So anxiety, the way I think about it is anxiety, the energy of anxiety is so cerebral, like it really pulls us up into the mind, right? And like you said before, you can feel anxiety in your body, but then your brain is going to try to fill in what the anxiety is about and then fixate on that. Right? Or sort of search.
Yeah.
So the energy is really pulled up out of the body, even though the actual experience of anxiety tends to be like, my stomach hurts, like my chest is tightening, my skin is clammy, like there are all these somatic like signals of anxiety. And so one way of looking at that is that the anxiety is trying to pull you out of a deeper core emotion that feels unsafe to feel for some reason in that moment. So let's say, well, in this case, I guess, the anxiety, the feeling, the dread, something bad is going to happen, which her original feeling about that was she didn't want to get on this plane. She was having this feeling of dread that something very bad was going to happen. And the way she tells that story is, I finally figured out, something's going to go wrong with the plane. That's why I feel this dread. I don't want to get on this plane. And then the story is like, he found her and they drove instead. And he's like, you saved my life or whatever it is. The something bad was meeting Nikki.
Yes.
Like she was right. Her intuition was right that something bad was going to happen. It just wasn't the plane. It was Nikki.
Yeah.
Meeting this person that was going to initiate the curse for her and so on. Anyway, if her anxiety, her feeling of dread was, I don't think this is the right person for me to marry. Her system may have shut that feeling down for her and replaced it with anxiety instead. Because if Nikki wasn't her person, what would that mean? She would go back to being all alone in the world, right? No parents, like she's got nobody to kind of lean on. And so, from that attachment perspective, from the perspective that human beings are wired to connect and attach, connection is a survival response. Something that I would for sure apply to Rachel, I think, is children who experience trauma or neglect or abuse or whatever it is in their childhood situation, especially with a caregiver, they will learn to trade authenticity for connection. And so they learn internal ways to shut down the emotions that they're having, the needs that they're feeling, their boundaries and things like that in order to maintain connection with an unsafe caregiver or an intermittently safe caregiver or in a situation where there's a lack of safety in general. Yes. Right? For whatever reason it might be.
I've done it many times and the anxiety just builds and builds and builds inside. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can kind of think of anxiety as a resource, actually,
Absolutely.
for that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's kind of like, at least on that one level, I'm in interaction with whoever it is, like the person that I want to stay connected to for whatever reason, survival or because I love them or whatever it is. Relationships are complicated. I notice a boundary, let's say, like I don't like it when this person talks to me this way. Instead of feeling anger and saying like, hey, I don't like that, don't talk to me that way, anxiety comes in instead to confuse that signal and slow things down so that you internalize it and go, oh, what's wrong with me? This is wrong. Like I shouldn't have that boundary, whatever it is. And it all goes into this like internal buzz that's very uncomfortable, but it's protecting you from breaking the connection with that person that you care about, right?
Yes. So thank you and not thank you, anxiety.
Exactly. Well, it's like, from an internal family systems perspective, you know, they talk about like managers and firefighters and protectors and stuff like that. And like emotions and reactions it's like your system will do anything to keep you safe.
Yes.
And what we often work on is like, okay, what is safe? What does it mean to be safe? Like maybe you weren't safe and that's where these parts of your system learn to activate to protect you. But is that still true, right? Like, are you now in emotionally safe relationships where you could say, hey, I have a boundary, or like, I have a need, can you help me with that? And then those parts, like, if they can be updated, can kind of soften a bit and be like, oh, maybe it would be okay for me to express that. And I think something I've learned, and I feel like you were kind of saying this to a degree, it's like, if I trust my own intuition, part of what that means is trusting my emotions and like realizing that it's okay for me to want to be in relationships where I can say my emotions, where I can say a need or a feeling, where it's okay for me to make a mistake or not know, right? And that it would be an emotionally safe place to be. And if I notice that it's not safe to do that, I don't have to. Like I have enough connection or attachment with myself or, you know, my right relationships that I've been cultivating or whatever it is, that I don't have that attachment need to connect with just anybody. Like I can do it in a more selective way, but that takes a lot of work, I think.
Yeah.
To get to that place.
Totally. Yeah. And I wish that people would be more open to many loves in the world.
Right.
That are not just that one person, because then you are a little bit more protected from settling for your, you know, quote unquote soulmate because you are desperate for connection, right? You have your family, you have your friends, you have, you know, a life that you've built for yourself that doesn't need somebody to come in and save you in some way, right?
In and out of relationships, right? Like I think you can do that without a partner, but also when you have a partner, you know, it's also important to not expect that person be your everything, because no human being can be. And when you
100%.
have those, you know, attachment breaks or whatever it is, when you're fighting or whatever it is, who are you going to complain to? Like you need friends, you need people to go to. Like we all do need. We need like at least one, but better a couple people to have that like primary attachment with that are like our people.
Yeah, I really liked Rachel and Nell.
Right.
Rachel and Nell and Jules.
Yeah.
Those guys believing her and kind of being in her corner and helping her. They were actually helping her, right? Try to figure it out and cutting her toe off.
Yeah. Yeah. Which has that Cinderella flavor, right? The original Grimm story, one of the ugly stepsisters cuts her heel off in order to fit into Cinderella's glass slipper, to try to literally fit into the mold of what the prince thinks he wants.
Interesting.
You know, and again, it's that literal making myself smaller, making myself less in order to fit myself into what I think this other person wants, right?
Yes.
And like it being so satisfying at the end that that's not how this goes, right? Like I'm so glad that this didn't end in a happy marriage between her and Nikki.
I know. Yeah.
That would have been a different horror for me.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. I liked her kind of being okay with it at the end, smiling in the truck driving away with the just married sign on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like it was a happy ending for her, not for anyone else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like this idea of romance horror. I mean, maybe feminine horror has been the word that I'm looking for, I guess. But I think, there've been some of these movies that I've seen recently. I actually thought Wuthering Heights fit into romance horror. That's kind of how I read that movie. The recent one by Emerald Fennell. I didn't see it as like a romance. I saw it as horror. Yeah. And then like Don't Worry Darling was another one. Obsession I haven't seen, but I've heard a lot of things about it that have the same kind of vibe of like romance as horror, you know? Yeah. I did a podcast not too long ago also about parenthood as horror, like these horror films that are coming out expressing these like family tropes and things like that. Like I feel like that is just such an interesting expression of what's going on right now, not only for women, I guess, but for like anybody who's trying to navigate these things, like whether parenthood or relational, romantic love, things like that. But yeah, I think in this moment where so many, specifically women, I guess, are choosing not to attach to men, like from a heterosexual perspective, yeah, that there are reasons why, right? That there's sort of horrifying reasons why in a lot of
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
mean, that's kind of a thing that we've been sold forever, and that a lot of, straight men do think is that, well, every woman wants to get married.
right,
Every woman wants to have children. That they're such beautiful experiences. And it's like, well, actually, they can be truly horrific.
horrifying,
Yeah.
absolutely, on so many levels,
Yeah.
right? On
Yeah.
so many levels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some stuff about like some people not liking this movie, this show, which like obviously not everyone's gonna like it, and that's fair. But there was sort of a comment of like, if you're a man and you just need or don't like this, maybe you should look at that, from that feminine horror perspective. Like maybe it wasn't made for you, or it wasn't made for your anxieties. And if you were to step into, Rachel's point of view, what would that feel like for you, right? Because I think it is different, like being a, cis het man entering marriage, it doesn't come with the same kind of anxieties. Historically, it has meant a man who gets married and has children makes more money, has a bigger house, like has better health, all of those things than a single man. But what we've learned
Built-in
recently,
childcare, built-in
yeah,
maid, like all of
yeah,
that. Yeah.
all of this stuff. And like being seen as a family man, which is valued at work, and then you get raises and things like that. For a woman, it's all been the opposite, right? And we have seen apparently single women make more money, live longer, like all of these things. And one thing I did think about, actually, I had a while where I had anemia, specifically when I was pregnant, but I've had anemia a few times. And anemia is when you're like, you have low iron, but it's kind of like your blood is low, right? And blood metaphorically is like your life force. It's your vitality. It's your energy, right? And so there's this idea of women in a heterosexual context sort of trading their life force so that men, like, or not even trading it, but giving it to men so they have more of that life force to go forward with. And then, the women have less, kind of thing. And then you see this horror show where it's hemorrhaging. Like that's the
There's a lot of that in this.
there was so much blood. There was so much blood in a way that I thought was just absolutely delightful.
Yeah.
I thought
I
that
really
was
liked
great. I
the
didn't
blood
mind
on the
that.
dance floor.
The blood on the
When,
dance floor, yeah,
yeah.
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 Which kind of reminded me, in Wuthering Heights, there is a room that has a shiny red floor that's not blood, but it really looks like blood. Like it's kind of this, and it foreshadows the hemorrhage that actually is to come. There's a death by hemorrhage in that one as well.
You told me to watch Wuthering Heights too, and I watched that. And yeah, I think I'm more on the side of horror these days too. Like I don't like the jumps, but I do like the symbolism, and I can get behind it much more than I could before.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I guess maybe, like, I wonder if I'm enjoying horror now because there's more horror that's made for me. Like, as
Yeah.
a woman, someone socialized as a woman, like, however you define that. Because, I mean, I've always found horror interesting, but I just haven't like, gone towards it. But stories like this one, I loved Don't Worry, Darling, as well. I thought that was so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It was.
Which was kind of an incel horror sort of flavor. And I do love this idea that horror can hold those anxieties and like kind of give us this catharsis around it. And I felt that, like, especially in that last episode, just like, yeah, this makes sense to me. Like, I kind of get this,
Yeah.
And I like that story for her.
Have you seen Rosemary's Baby?
Yes, I have seen
Okay.
Rosemary's Baby. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time for me too. I wonder what that's like these days to
And
watch.
I was a young woman at that point. I mean, I feel like as a mom, that might be really a different watch, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And even just thinking about that now, what's my biggest fear about being a boy mom? It's actually that patriarchy is going to take my children away from me, in the sense that they will turn my children into something they're not. And I feel like what I remember about Rosemary's Baby was like, it was sort of a cabal of men using her to like either impregnate her with the devil's baby or turn her baby into a devil or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the fear for me in a lot of ways, is that patriarchy is going to, my children are so sweet. Like the baby can't talk yet, but the other day, the 5-year-old came down for breakfast and I was like, hey buddy, do you want a hug? And he goes, no. And I was like, okay. It's important for me from a consent perspective to just take a no really easily and cleanly. He looked at me and he goes, do you need a hug? And I was like, yeah, yes, I do. Like,
Did he give
thanks
you
for
one?
thinking about that. Yeah, of course he did. He gave me a big hug, and I was just like, you are not the patriarchal like stereotype
Yeah.
that I feel like so much of the world, the way men are talked about now, and maybe are, I mean, probably are in a lot of ways. Like, I think a lot of women talk about this because they've had bad experiences, right?
Yeah.
But they don't start that way. They start as little human beings, right? And
Yeah.
like, it depends on the kid, but like, my kid is so thoughtful and so kind and so loving. And like, we passed by his best friend's house and he was reminded that his best friend is leaving for the summer and he cried,
Oh.
like he was so sad that he was going to miss his friend.
Yeah.
And we needed to go like say goodbye before they left for the summer because it was going to break my little 5-year-old's heart. Like, he is a loving boy. And I don't want that to be taken away from him. And also there is this kind of fear that like, well, I hope things are different and better for him. Like, I have optimistic hope about that. I think sometimes as a parent, you have to feel optimistic about certain things because you can't get through the day otherwise. But if it's not, like, will I be sending this kind of sweet, tender boy into a world where he'll just be, you know, taken advantage of or hurt for that reason or rejected for that reason? Like, I don't know how it's going to go for him. And I know like what I want to give as a mom from that perspective and to like protect those parts of him so strongly. And, I don't want to coddle him like Victoria's mom did of Nikki, turning him into this kind of like, soft, but like in a kind of wobbly way. Like, there was no structure to him, I guess. And I
Yeah.
don't want that for my boys. But one of the reasons I feel like I need support as a mom too, and like, don't let me just be the only person raising this child. Like, he needs his dad, he needs his uncle, I would love for him to have like positive male role models. That's something I want to think about, as he's getting older. And for Ozzy, I don't know well enough yet, like what he's going to need necessarily, if his gender is going to stay a boy and all those things, and we'll see how it goes. But, he needs good models and other people to parent him who can say like, yeah, your mom has anxiety or whatever it is. And that's, and like, there are other ways of being in the world. Like, if it's just me, I feel like that's so intense, right?
Yeah.
There's no way that I can do it perfectly for him and be everything that he is going to need me to be, which again, like you said, we need many loves, we need many attachments. Like, just one person, even the absolute best person, that's not going to be a good environment. Which actually, the movie Room with Brie Larson, have you
Yeah.
seen that one?
No, I'm too claustrophobic for that.
Yeah, I don't know that you should. I loved it, and I think about it all the time, but it has kind of a happy ending, I guess, but it's like a hard watch because it's based on a true story as well.
Has
And the
happy
idea,
endings in the same way that this didn't have any jump scares?
great question, Mel. I can't answer that in the affirmative. I mean, it's a hard movie. Like, there's a lot of hard things about it. But the concept of that movie is that there's a woman who is abducted and she's kept in this guy's shed for years and ends up having a baby there. And the baby grows up till he's 5, and then they escape from the room. And like, there's a lot more of the movie actually after that. But I think about that movie all the time because sometimes motherhood really feels like that. It feels like you are in a small room by yourself. And listen, I'm talking as a COVID mom. My first child was born December 2020, like height of COVID. So the isolation piece was a big part of it. But also socially, I have felt, I don't always feel this with my partner who participates, but like, I have felt that especially as a mom, I'm supposed to know how to do this by myself. I'm supposed to be able to do it without support. Also, as a military spouse who's, my partner will be gone for months sometimes at a time, and I am on like by myself. But I think about Room in that way where it's just like, you do sometimes feel like you're in this tiny room, and it shouldn't be like that, right? Like, you should have so many windows and doors and people coming in and out and space and different loves and, times where you can separate from your child and not have to be with them at all times. Like, that's good for them. So, that's another example maybe of this feminine horror. I don't know that that was a horror movie. I guess it was more of a drama, but it's that horror metaphor that like has really stuck with me. I feel that.
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy that we do, like, just the individualism of how we live is totally insane. We don't have we don't have communes. Like, that's weird to us. Though
Right.
with the economy, there are more adults living with their adult parents than in a really long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I saw a reel the other day of someone who was like, me and my husband brought in my husband's best friend as a surrogate for our child, and the three of us are raising this child together, and we're going to have another one. And I was like, the dream, 3 parents. Incredible. Like,
Yeah.
What a way to do it, right? Like, you've got 3, and then you've got, like, you can share the expenses of that. Like, it's yeah, of course people aren't having babies and getting married, like, in this economy.
I know,
Crazy.
seriously. I don't know how people do it. I truly don't. I don't even know how I take care of myself. I
I
can't
know.
imagine.
Yeah. Somebody, I was telling someone about this whole hospital experience with Ozzy recently, and they were like, I hope you're getting some good rest. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
I have naps with the baby when I can, like,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Impossible.
no. It's like almost a foreign concept to me. The way that I could rest when I was on my own
Yeah.
was really different.
Yes.
So, yeah, any other thoughts about something very bad is going to happen?
I really liked the music. I Will Survive playing at the end was funny.
Yeah. The
Um,
music was great.
the
Yeah.
music was great. The old-timey love songs that played throughout there was a bunch of them
Yeah.
in
And
every
I loved
episode.
that kind of like reframing of the old-timey love songs as horror songs, right?
Yes.
Like, You Are My Destiny, that Paul Anka song that kept playing. It's sort of like, oh God, what destiny, right? And like Rachel's destiny was blood-soaked
Yes.
because
Yeah.
of this guy, right?
Yeah.
Can I talk about curses for a second?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
please.
So we've talked about curses a little bit, and I want to get a bit deeper into that because curses is actually interesting. So I think it's useful to think about the curse in this case from an intergenerational trauma perspective. We can break intergenerational curses by making different decisions than our ancestors made, right? And I think that can be powerful. That's one way of looking at it. There is a more literal experience of a curse that I sometimes see. As a therapist who is also spiritually oriented, right? A therapist who's also a witch is like how people will sometimes come to me. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but like sometimes when everything is just going wrong for you, or, for me, I had this experience of like, why are my relationships always ending the same way? Like, it feels like I'm cursed, right? Like it feels like something is happening for me, in this way. And, that's an experience that people have sometimes. So I actually do think there can be kind of a literal experience of that. And there are a couple of different ways I'll work with it. So one is, what actually is that, right? What is that repeated? I think the way of looking at it is like a pattern of something happening to you rather than necessarily something that you are doing as a pattern, because that's something that you have control over, right? So if you have a pattern of something bad happening to you over and over again in like eerily similar ways, sometimes there is a behavior underlying that. Sometimes there is actually, metaphorically, it's kind of like, how I've seen it before is there is an ancestor who's trying to protect you from something, and you have an unconscious loyalty to this ancestor to maintain this pattern, like on their behalf, and also because they think that that's best for you. I learned about unconscious loyalty from a family constellations perspective, and it's not like explicitly woo-woo, but it also really feels that way. So it's kind of a way of like taking a detail from the intergenerational trauma perspective and maybe thinking about it in that way, where it's like, let's say there was an ancestor who was harmed by men over and over again. And so there's something about like, I don't want to end up like Aunt Sally or whatever. And so there is some unconscious part of me that is like terrified of men, and I don't want to engage with that because of like the horrible things that happened to her. And there's kind of a way that you can work with it in your inner world where you can like invite Aunt Sally, kind of the way that Rachel did with her Ouija board. And you have a chat around like, my life is different than yours. Like maybe I don't want to keep going the way that you did, and like maybe it's time to end that contract or that unconscious loyalty with you. And so I've kind of had that internal experience like guided with folks, and then things change. It's very interesting. It's like something shifts in that pattern once that conversation has been had. And I don't know how to explain it exactly, but I think it is one of these things that like feels very woo, and maybe it is, like maybe there is like a magic there, or maybe there's some sort of unconscious, literal explanation to it. But I think sometimes that is how curses will go. I don't think it's usually someone cursing you in the way that like someone disliked you and they like cast a spell to make you have a bad time. Some people believe that that would be very easy to break if that happens, because other people's negative energy, like your energy is always going to be a lot stronger than that, like a piece of someone's negative energy. But the unconscious loyalty thing I've seen as very, very powerful, and I've seen it break, which has been very interesting too.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, even just like you said earlier, like just a lot of it not being yours, it's somebody else's. And if you can kind of take it off yourself and be like, oh, that's coming from this ancestor, like it's not me. I can let it go. Is kind of, I can imagine that being healing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And like there's something about doing it in that internal way where you imagine the ancestor, or maybe they're really there, like who cares? It doesn't matter because it works either way, right? It's like there's a way of sort of telling your system we're not doing this anymore, that your system can hear, because a lot of that stuff is right brain stuff, right? Like it's not literal kind of logical prefrontal cortex stuff. It's like the way that your nervous system has absorbed it, the way your emotional system has absorbed it, your like natural instincts and reactions around something working in that more imaginative way seems to communicate the message differently, and it's very, very powerful.
Huh.
In my experience.
I've been looking at old journals lately. I don't know why it's torturous, because I literally have written my entire life down, quotes from people. Like it's insane. But I'm so happy that I have them, because looking through them, I can see patterns. It's like they're 10 years apart, and I can see, oh, okay, I did that then, doing it again and again. And it's kind of breaking what I'm doing now by not dating is like breaking the curse of like old me, not an ancestor, but old me, which is good, but also bad in a lot of ways.
I mean, a lot of what I'll do with folks is have a chat with a past version of the self, right?
Yeah.
Like it's, way more often than ancestors, actually. It's younger selves. Yeah. Often children, but sometimes teens or whatever it is, like somebody who was hurt. That's often where the system picks up that pattern, right? Is like, in order to protect myself, I need to do this or not do that. And sometimes we have to have a chat with that younger self and be like, it is actually safe now to take this risk again. Or, we're not going to do it that way. Or like, you don't have to sacrifice yourself for relationship anymore, or whatever it might be. And again, that is wildly powerful, like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to have that conversation with myself.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Because I think even just removing yourself from something, it's like you have like a power that you didn't have before to even do that, right? So it's like, obviously you're not going to be making the same choices that you did back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the thought of the idea of a curse scares me. Because I don't believe in them, but I also am like, I mean, I don't not believe in them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, listen, if somebody cursed you, what you would do is, from a witchy perspective, what you would do is revoke your consent for that person to affect you. Because anytime there is something like that, and it's sort of like a curse, or, if you're around somebody who just like affects you in this way, shifting your intention to like reclaim your energy for yourself again is powerful in a lot of levels. And like, when and if you do get into, which like it happens, negative energies, entities, like the Ouija board thing, there's so many warnings. Like, witches don't use Ouija boards that often because they're like a portal that opens to like anybody who wants to pop in and say hello. So like if you're opening that portal, which like you're doing intentionally, whether you're using a Ouija board or not, you're kind of like, there's actually that moment in Nosferatu. Did you see Nosferatu? That's another
Dafoe?
Romance horror sort of. Yeah.
Willem Dafoe one? Yeah, I did. Yeah.
At the very beginning, she's like, someone, anyone from any realm, help me because I'm so lonely. And like watching that, I was like, girl, you never do that. You have to be so clear that you're like, only energies in alignment with my highest good. Like if you don't say that, you can kind of have like an openness to those negative energies, right? But even if that happens, like you can correct for that. You're not going to actually reanimate Dracula, probably.
I mean, I have an antique um, Ouija board in my house, and I love it. It's beautiful, but I would never, like, ever do any
Yeah.
kind of anything with it
Right.
because I don't believe in those things. But like I said, I'm not stupid enough to.
You don't want to be the one in the horror film that's like, it's not real,
No,
right?
no,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like even setting an intention around, like, I love that phrase, I revoke my consent for any energies that aren't mine or whatever it is. Like, I don't know, that's just such a powerful phrasing. And if you think about that with, like, again, let's say you spent time with a colleague or something that has like stinky energy that you don't like, you can just kind of say like, no, like, goodbye to that energy. Like you sort of set an intention for that, and it does something to your nervous system or to the spiritual realm or however you want to look at it,
Yeah.
where it does feel better, right? Like I think it's just part of it. Well, maybe it kind of goes back to this idea of like trusting your own intuition. And what does that mean? Trusting that you're powerful enough to claim your own energy, to claim your own experience, right? The way Rachel says to Jude, I'm so sorry this happened to you, but it did happen to you. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Like, believe your own self, believe your own experience. And again, I don't think that means that if you have an intuition that something bad is going to happen and you shouldn't get on the plane and you have no evidence that it's the plane. I don't think that it's that. I don't think it's like listening to every signal of your anxiety, but rather like, oh, okay, I'm having a feeling, like, what's going on with me? Is there something underneath this that I need to pay attention to, right? Is there an emotion there, whatever it is? Like, I don't think, I personally would never want the ability to tell the future. And I'm
Absolutely
saying this as a
not.
tarot reader. I don't really read the future. I don't think that's helpful. I think that's extremely anxiety inducing. I think tarot is really useful for guidance, giving advice, like things to be aware of, things to pull up from the shadows. Like it's so great for that. But I feel like good or bad, I don't want to know the future. Like no,
I,
thank you.
does anybody?
Want to know the future?
Yeah.
I mean, I think people sometimes turn to tarot because they want to know that everything's going to be okay. But what if
Right.
that's not the answer you get?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And like bad things happen, but if we knew that bad things were going to happen, I feel like we'd have less resilience to deal with it. Like we have to be able to just
Absolutely.
face what's happening to us and
And
not sit in dread
everything,
and fear.
yeah. I mean, I really find it comforting. It sounds flippant and silly to be like, well, everything's going to be fine. But like everything really will be fine because even when bad things happen, you're gonna be fine. Like it's, of course, you would hope that wouldn't happen, but you will 100% be fine. Not like we can adapt to anything. You could lose all your limbs and you would adapt to that,
And I
like
think that's the self-trust, right? Like
yeah,
it's not that I trust that everything's going to be okay or that I'll always know the right answer or that I'll always make the right choice or that there even is a right choice. It's more so like I trust myself that I have some resilience. I have some support. If these things happen, I'll adapt. It's more that, right? Because I think if your belief is everything's going to be great,
great. Yeah,
that's life. That's not life. That's not how it works, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So anyway, I think I think that's that same thing, right? It's like if somebody were to put a curse on me, I would trust in my own power to claim my own energy back from
Mm.
that experience, right? My favorite magic spell is this is my body. Just saying that, right? This is my body. This is my energy. Like it's like an incantation that you can say that claims your body and your experience back from being doubted or having, a bad experience or being with somebody whose energy affected you or whatever it is. It's just like, let me come back to myself because this I
Hmm.
know, this I
Hmm.
have, whatever happens. That's
Yeah,
powerful, right?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I like that this ended with her being like, she knew all along that it was something was wrong. And then in the end is kind of smiling like, you know, I knew, and it did work out for her.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, in a whole different way.
in a whole different
Yeah.
way, not what
Yeah.
you
And I
expected.
would love to see, like, what is the witness's life like, and how does that go, and what are the rules, and
Yeah,
all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
But that'll have to be in our imaginations, I think.
yeah. I think so too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much, Mel, for being willing to sit through this horror for me and
Yeah.
for this conversation. Yeah, I really appreciate your thoughts and your reactions and stuff, and I'm glad you liked it in the
I
end.
did like it. Yeah, I'm glad I got to it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much, Mel. We'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks, Julie. Bye.
Bye.
Soundstripe.